773 East Broadway. This is the Jake Feinberg Show. Comedy on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live, and download our free app to your smartphone so you can stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast, the Jim Parisi Show, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. Can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today. And without further ado, I want to bring back a friend of the program, a guy who continues to inspire on the bandstand as a producer. And his relevance today, not just musically, but as a leader in the studio, is paramount, because the only way my generation and younger generations are truly going to learn how to create new musical vocabulary on the bandstand is from their elders. And thankfully, they are still here and they're still playing. Jim Keltner, welcome back to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thank you, Jake.
It's good to see. It's good to hear you, brother.
Well, it's good to hear you, man. Thank you for those nice words.
You know, I got this very kind of I don't know what the right word is. Danny Kortchmar threw up a post on Facebook the other night, just flowing with saying, "I just saw the most kick-ass band in the world, Goldings, Keltner, and Blake Mills." That just went down. That gig recently. He said it's the best band in LA right now.
Tino Palladino on bass.
Tino Palladino. I don't even. Okay, yeah. Wow. I mean, ferocious. I mean.
Oh man. Okay. Well. Yeah. I mean, it's you could call it a little dream band. I mean, it's. I have many dream bands in my life, you know, as you can imagine. I have had the great fortune over the years to be able to play with some amazing players. I went from playing. Well, I'll go back a little bit further. Last year, I can't remember. I don't know exactly which month it was, but it was late last year. I was in the studio with Willie Weeks and Ray Parker Jr. and Doyle Bramhall and Charlie Sexton and oh God, I start naming names and then I panic because I can't remember.
It's okay. So it's a dream band, though. This is another.
Anyway, the players like that make it so much fun to be in the studio. That's the only place I am anymore, really, is in the studio, because I've gotten, as I told my friend Steve Ripley from Tulsa, when he asked me to come back and do a session with him, or not a session, but to do a show with him when they opened Bob's Archives back in Tulsa. You know, it's my hometown and the whole thing, and my relationship with Bob, and then the fact that I got Steve Ripley on Bob's band back then in 79 or 80, whenever it was. And so it was like a no-brainer for him. For me, it was very difficult because I had to say, "No, Steve, I can't go." And I told him that, I said, "Look, I've gotten to the age finally where I feel, or the age or the stage or both, where I feel that I can now say no to somebody." I've never been able to do that all my life. Since I'm a kid, I have always taken every gig that came on the phone to me. I don't care what it was. I played everything that people called me to play, and that served me well. I don't regret a bit of that. I'm glad I did it the way I did it, and I never put money first. Later on, people told me about money and what I should charge. So it's always been about the love of playing and some sort of responsibility as a musician that I should play a gig. Somebody asked me to play, I need to play. So I did that all my life. Now, I told Steve, I said, "Listen, if I can't say no now, then when? You know, as I get older, I'm already older. It
right.
happens.
No, I mean,
I'm at the stage now where I can say that. And so what I've done is I've said, that I don't want to. I don't want to. It's not like I'm choosing gigs, like I'll take your gig, but I don't want to do that gig,
right,
that
right,
kind of thing.
right.
What it is it's I'll play because that's what I do. That's what I love doing. But you're gonna have to come here if you want me to be on your record. You have to come here. You owe yourself a nice visit to Southern California anyway. So you should come out and. We got great studios, great people, and engineers and musicians, everything. They've got them great everywhere. Nashville is one of the greatest. New York is still always will be great. Florida, Miami. You can go make your record anywhere, but unfortunately, I won't be able to meet you there. You're gonna have to meet me here. So that's what it's come down to, and it feels good. So anyway, I took a long way around to say that.
Yeah, you were on the bandstand. I mean, what is it like?
Yeah, I was on the bandstand live the other night because my buddy Blake Mills, who's an extraordinary prodigy. I don't know what you would call him. He's amazing, and he put together. He said, "I'm going to have Larry Goldings play keys, and I'm going to have Pino play bass." And can you play with us for the month of Thursday? He was doing the month of March.
Yes.
He's doing every Thursday, and
wow,
it was like a residency
yeah.
at this place in Los Angeles called No Name Club. It used to be the old Largo, right across the street from Cantor's on Fairfax, and I used to go in there and play with John Bryan and different people. What was great about it was you'd walk right in the front door, and you go straight to the right. There would be a little dark door. You open it up, and it was right. And I'm not exaggerating. It was right at the drum stool, so you never even had to enter the club. So I would just go do that, and I'd sit down and play, and
duck out.
And then afterwards, I would, hang out with everybody a little bit, and then split. But this is the same club. It's a different kind of configuration now. Little small club, small stage where you have to set up real close to each other, which is great fun to be able to be sitting in each other's laps, basically, And I mean, Larry Goldings on keyboard, Pino on bass, and Blake on guitar is an extraordinary little combination. So I jumped at that. I was only able to make one so far. I'll make the one tomorrow night, and then the final Thursday on at the end of this month. I missed the first two, but it's to play live for me. Playing live, it's a bit of a thing. I don't make any money playing live anymore because you can't make any money, playing a little club gig like that. And so what I have to do, it ends up costing me to have my cartage, the drum doctor deliver my stuff, and I don't want to put that on the guy that calls me. So it ends up usually costing me, and which is fine, but in this case, like with Blake is such a fastidious young man, as well as a musician. He gets all his buddies to help with the cars and trucks and stuff, and he has all the stuff delivered. And I played on his kit the first time around because it was a little wet, and it's going to be very wet tomorrow night. And I have a goat head on my bass drum currently, my little 18, and it won't be happy during the wetness.
You're talking about the weather.
So,
it's going to be raining, so you want
it's raining like crazy right now as we speak here, which I love. I mean, we got to have it here in Southern California, So I'm sorry. Look, I started this whole interview with going
what are
all
you
over the
talking?
place.
Stop it! You're always did. I asked you. I guess what I'm trying to say is, do you still feel when you do play live? And this is just we opened up with a live Dylan show from '81. It's one of the most transcendent musical experience. I mean, just listening to it, I think Spooner Oldham and you were on that tour. I mean, I just wanted you to talk about
Tim Drummond and Freddie Tackett.
Oh, Freddie Tackett was playing guitar. I didn't even know that.
Oh yeah.
Oh no. But what I wanted to talk about is in order to raise the collective consciousness of the audience, Keltner, you have to be in a good state of mind. Like you have to be entertaining yourself. You can't be bored. And I kind of wanted you to talk
Good
about.
point.
And I just wanted you to talk about that. I mean, again, you're not doing this anymore for money. There is no, in fact, you lose money on it. But can you still talk about in your live gigs when you played live? I don't care if it was you and Albert. I don't care if it was with Bob or anybody. Can you talk about how to, it doesn't just happen that the collective body on stage can just automatically inspire the audience. The musicians have to be inspired. And I just wanted you to talk about that evolution in your playing in a live setting and how magical that feeling is when it's really just flowing back and forth between the band and the audience.
Well, in keeping with the little theme here of jumping from one thing to the other.
Absolutely.
I will tell you that I had that feeling. I can remember having that feeling at the age of 13 when I first got my first set of drums. And when I played for my dad and my mom and my sister. And I had that same feeling later when we got to California, and I joined my first little band with some friends from school, and they took pictures of us, and my mom put the dollar bill in that picture, and I still have it. It says Jim's first dollar, and playing for those people at the Recreation Center, Jefferson Recreation Center in Pasadena, California, was a thrill like nothing else. I always had an imaginary world. I think it was a protection, like I had it when we moved from Tulsa to L.A. We were uprooted. My dad uprooted us. I was 13 years old. I was 12 actually, and I know I was 13. I just had my drums. That's right. I just got my drums, and my dad, put them in the little trailer in the back of the brand new Chevy that he bought to drive out here, and we had our TV, our black and white TV, my set of drums, and our suitcases, and that was it. That was a dedication my dad had to making sure that I played drums. To be uprooted, from your life at the age of 13, it's pretty heavy duty. And I knew that it was going to be a heavy thing to have to go through. Somehow I knew it, but I immediately went into my imaginary world, and I became the colonel in charge of a fleet of rocket ships that were going to be traveling across the country.
Wow.
And they were in the form of ballpoint pens, ink pens that I had collected, and so I would hang them out the window as we were driving across the desert, Route 66, and I'd be giving orders to the people on board and stuff. It was a way of dealing with that. And actually, I think, wow, this is fun in a way, Jake. I'm actually, you're being my psychiatrist for the day.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, that's what Ray Neapolitan said. It's like, after 3 interviews with him, he's like, it's like going with Jake. It's like going to the shrink. But yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, that's interesting that Ray would say that. Ray, a good buddy of mine.
Well, I mean, I do it to everybody, man.
Well, it's true because as I think about it just occurred to me as I was telling you this little story, where that first manifest, that thing of protecting yourself, was when my mom had a nervous breakdown when my little sister died at the age of 6, and I was 8, and it traumatized my mom so bad that she had a nervous breakdown, and they had to take her to a hospital after the funeral, and that was the last time I saw my mom for quite a while, several months. And at the age of 8, to be separated from your mom, at the time I didn't know those things, but as later on you grow up, you realize, oh my God, yeah, that's why this and that's why that is the way it is. But I was shipped down to Vivian, Louisiana, down in the swamps to live with my Aunt Connie and my Uncle Albert.
Wow.
Who was in charge of an oil tank right in the middle of the swamps in Vivian. And after dinner every night, I asked my uncle one time, I said, which way is Tulsa? And he said, it's that way. So I went out in the back of the house, and I faced toward Tulsa. And I didn't want anybody to hear me, so I kind of whispered, Mom, Mother, Mama. And it's only now that I can tell that story without breaking down, because it was a big deal for me. It was all my life coming up, remembering that. That was, I didn't realize it was a kid, it was an 8-year-old boy being separated from his mom, and the last time he saw her, she was being carried out of this place by my dad and 2 of my uncles. And so it was very traumatic. Anyway, I think that's where this little protection started for
exactly.
myself,
absolutely.
Being separated from either my mom, God forbid, or separated from my little sister, who they forced me to look at in the casket, and I said after that I would never ever go to a funeral again. And of course I had to change that, but it messed me up for many years. I cried constantly for years at seeing my little sister in the casket like that. So
I just want to ask you a question. Could you talk about, did it give you some, I mean, clearly your mom, she was in a psychiatric ward, or they were hospitalizing her, but I mean, she did come out of it. I mean, she gave you that first dollar bill.
Yeah, she came out of it.
She came out of it.
After I was sent down there to Louisiana, and thank God, it was with people who loved me more than anything, and I loved them. My Aunt Connie, she was my mom's favorite sister. She was one of 9 kids, so I have many aunts and uncles on my mama's side, and so all that was good. And then I might as well just finish the whole thing. So the house burned down. The oven exploded one morning, and the house burned down. I wasn't hurt, and my cousin wasn't hurt, but my uncle and my youngest uncle, who was there living with us at the same time, he's the one that got the full blast of the oven, so he was hurt badly. My aunt was burnt to a crisp by going back in and out of the house trying to find everybody. And we kept yelling at her that we're okay. My cousin and I, we were out by a tree watching this whole thing.
Wow.
90 miles to Shreveport, their uncle, my Uncle Albert's brother-in-law, drove us in his old Ford from the swamp in Vivian all the way 90 miles to Shreveport, with these people burnt burnt flesh, burnt hair. It was a horrendous thing, and so then they shipped me off to Grand Prairie, Texas, where my uncle Dent was living with my Aunt Nika, and so I stayed there for a while with them, and again, same situation. It was a very loving, they're on my dad's side. My Uncle Heimer was on my dad's side, and my Aunt Nika, wonderful people, and so that worked out really well. And then I got back to Tulsa, and I can't tell you how there's so much of this that disappears. I'm sure this is what happens in people's lives during traumatic times. You can't.
Right. You go into it's called a fugue state. You just it blows out. You just wipe it away.
Right. So all that's gone, like how it happened and all that. I do recall some trips from Louisiana to Tulsa, roughly during that period. But anyway, most of that stuff is wiped out. And so when I got back, everything was normal. My mom was back, everybody was good, and then I started hearing little talks at the dinner table about going to California. And so it wasn't like I wasn't fully prepared, but this little imaginary world that we were talking about a minute ago, that's kind of how that all started, is a protection, for separation from things and people and stuff. And so it served me well coming to California. And then later on, after, like when I started playing for money, because I got married right away. I met, fortunately, my beautiful Cynthia, and in school, high school, junior high, and we married pretty much right out of high school, and then I had to be working, and so being able to play music and support my family was a tremendous thing, as you can imagine, and but I had to do all kinds of gigs with playing music that I didn't really care for, because I had become a jazz guy. I only wanted to play music that sounded like Coltrane or Miles. I wanted to be in that world, and so I couldn't, obviously, playing at a bar mitzvah for nice people who were paying me good money. I had to play dance music,
right?
And or if I was playing in a beer joint down in Redondo Beach, for people who were drinking and wanting to dance or play or talk loud and stuff over the music, you had to do that to make the money. So in order to do that, I became Elvin Jones in my mind.
This was the new protective shield kind of thing.
Yeah,
exactly.
It was just automatic,
Wow.
I became Elvin. There was a period there where I was Shelley Man, but that was pretty early on. By the time I got to the point where I was like just putting my drums in the Volkswagen, driving from Altadena to Redondo Beach, and anybody not from California will not know how far that is. Of course, the traffic wasn't that bad in those days, but that was a long way to drive for $10. And so you had to go into this world, this imaginary world, and it served me well. And so then later on, as things developed, and I could tell you about times playing live on stage with Ry Cooder around the country, especially by the time we got to London, when we did our overseas tour, and playing with him where we got to the point where we were like 2 feet up off the ground. It was so great. The band was so amazing, and the music was just killing, and we were, at the top of our game. And so there was that. I remember knowing that the people were enjoying it while I was playing. I knew that it's instinctive for the artist, I guess, to know that if you're enjoying it, they're bound to be enjoying it out there. And so, yeah, that was to answer your question. That was huge for me during those days. And then by the time I got to playing with Bob in '79, it was '79, '80, and '81.
Absolutely.
Those years were just unreal. Playing live with him on stage in the craziest places, and the most wonderful places.
He played the Warfield in San Francisco,
the Warfield,
Sanger
in
in L.A., and in New Orleans.
Right,
I mean,
and playing those kind of places where you're up close with the people, and the people being terribly confused. Most of the fans being really confused about Bob singing "I Believe in You,"
right?
Talking about Jesus, and it confused a lot of people, and so that was a very, very powerful time in my life. To see Bob dedicated to being up there, singing to the people, singing those new songs, and being the way he was really mindful of his position there. He didn't smoke in front of people. He wasn't ever really a big drinker that I recall. He just he was being a good example to everybody, pretty much. And I remember that, and I remember that that there were times there was one time when we got a 5-minute. You know how long 5 minutes? I counted it. It was a 5-minute standing ovation.
Wow!
After one of the songs in Seattle.
It wasn't the end of the show. It was like just mid-set.
No, it was not the end of the show.
Wow!
And I will never forget that. How can you forget that? And so there just were.
Well, Keltner, I want to ask you: could that protective shield, that dream state, that the ballpoint pens, the rocket ships, the Elvin Jones, by the time you got to Bob, was that protective shield like? Were you using a lot of hard drugs at that point?
I promised my wife I wouldn't talk about that period of.
Okay, that's fine. My question was if that was that's fine.
I can tell you that obviously, without my talking about it, that those years were crazy for almost everybody that I know. Not only just musicians, everybody.
I know.
And
was.
So those are crazy days, and I will, along with my friends who I will speak about that stuff with. I agree with them that we had a lot of fun, but it was dangerous fun. It wasn't good fun. It wasn't healthy fun, and a lot of my peers, a lot of my friends are gone because of that, and those who are here, some of them are in bad shape because of it, and
that's all that needs to be said.
I don't feel like talking about it is almost kind of like celebrating it, and I don't want to celebrate anything like that. So
sure.
You can kind of surmise.
Yeah, no, I dig. I completely respect it. It's been a minute since I last talked to Keltner and Jim Keltner, and we have a game on this program called Name That Voice. I want you to listen to this audio clip. It's take a couple minutes long, but we'll come back and we'll break it down.
Okay.
Thing that I ever played that came close to being a hit and it was a sub call from Jimmy Lee Keltner, and it was Cheech and Chong's Basketball Jones. If you've ever heard that. And
wait, hold on. He's like, I'll give you. He's like, I want you to. I can't make this. You got to make it.
Yeah, oh yeah, and it was an all-star cast. Klaus Vorman played bass. I think Carole King was playing piano. Who else?
So wait, was it a movie soundtrack or just some sort of made for TV thing?
No, it was just a song they had written for an LP they put out. And I don't know if it ever came out in one of their movies or not.
What was the name? And just tell me the name. Tell me the name of it one more time.
Basketball Jones.
Basketball Jones, and there's Karstein filling in for Jimmy Lee Kellner. I want to be clear though.
Yeah.
I mean, Leon, Radel, Blackwell, Karstein. What was the sequential order? How did you guys just one day get together and like all drive out together to save money? I mean, how did you get out there? Who got out there first?
Oh no. Leon and Chuck were out there the first time I went out. Now, it was back in those days, a year or two difference in age made quite a bit of difference because when I was, still a junior and senior in high school, Leon and Chuck and J.J. Cale, Johnny Cale in those days, and some other, they were the ones that really, made the mark. Now, Jimmy Lee's from Tulsa, but nobody knew him until years later, till we met him out in California.
Well, he was a baseball fanatic. He was just playing ball,
Well, yeah, but see, he and his family, they moved to Pasadena when he was 13 years old.
Right.
So it wasn't until Gary Lewis and the Playboys came along that we all met Keltner. And Keltner was, how that happened was Keltner was working in a music store, and Gary Lewis came in there. Initially Gary played drums, and he came in there, I guess, looking for drums or sticks or whatever, and Keltner was working there, and they met. And then when Gary decided to go out front and start playing guitar, they hired Keltner. Well, Gary was produced by Snuff Garrett and arranged by Leon, so Leon meets Keltner, and they get to chewing the fat, and that's when everybody found out that Keltner was from Tulsa.
All right, Jim, who is that?
Oh, God, you had me mesmerized there.
I know, dude, let me tell you, man, it goes on and on.
That was my dear friend and one of my first big influences on drums, Jimmy Karstein.
You are correct.
Tulsa, Oklahoma.
You are correct, and this is revelatory. Is factually Gary Lewis? Is that accurate? He connected with you when he walked into Barry and Grossman.
Yeah, I was behind the counter at Barry and Grassmick music store in Pasadena, and he was studying at Pasadena Playhouse, which was a big deal for actors, I guess, in those days. And his dad, was the great Jerry Lewis, and so I guess he expressed interest in acting and singing and stuff, and so they got him in there. And so on his lunch breaks, he would come to the music store, and hang out with me because I was a drummer and he was a drummer, and plus, you can imagine, Jerry Lewis was like probably my greatest idol at that time. I wanted to be like Jerry Lewis in every way. I combed my hair like he did. I did everything to be like Jerry Lewis. And so here comes his son
Right.
into the store.
Right.
And he's, and so I was just like all over him, like, well, and, I wanted to hear all about his dad and this and that and everything he could tell me. And so he eventually said, okay, well, I want you to teach me some drums. And so I said, sure. So I was only teaching snare drum at the time, but I was trying to help him with his hands and stuff, and he wasn't really into it that much. He finally said to me at some point, he said, I want to go up front and play the guitar. Why don't you be my drummer? And I said, Gary, I don't like rock and roll, man. I'm not going to be able to do that. And he said, well, it's $250 a week. And
really got it. It's pretty good, man. I got a wife and family.
Well, absolutely. And I think I was only making $60 to $80 a week, something like that. So $250 a week. I said, okay, yeah, absolutely. So I went. I went. I did everything they said. I shaved off my mustache, shaved off my little beard, and got the first and only professional haircut that I ever got. And became one of those little Hollywood guys. And we and then of course, like you said, I met all the guys from Oklahoma. It turned out that Tommy Triplehorn was the guitar player, great guitar player, and he loved jazz as
really?
well. He was a jazz pianist.
Wow.
He was a jazz piano player who played rock and roll guitar.
That is insane.
And so we had everything in common. He was my roommate. Tommy Triplehorn, and he was from Tulsa on top of that. And so his daughter is Jeannie Triplehorn, the great actress.
My God. What was in the water in Tulsa? Triplehorn was from Tulsa. Unbelievable.
Yeah, Tommy Triplehorn, and then Carl Radel, of course, one of the greatest bass players ever lived. From Tulsa, and he was playing bass. And Carl really became my teacher. Carl he turned me on to Stax records, Al Jackson, Booker T, Cropper, Duck, and all them. He turned me on to the Muscle Shoals guys, Roger and
David Hood and those cats. Yeah, the rhythm section.
David Hood and all those guys, and he told me, listen to Chuck Blackwell, because Chuck's got the pocket, and so I listened to Chuck, and I saw Chuck playing one time live on Chuck was doing TV shows at that time, and Delaney Bramlett actually was in that same band. I think it was some TV band they had, and so I saw Chuck playing one day he was playing with maracas in his right hand, and holding a stick, and in his left hand a regular stick, and I remember thinking, wow, last time I saw that was a Mexican guy on a flatbed truck in Tulsa that my dad had taken me to see this band. They were some friends of his playing, and I remember, but I was really young, and I remember seeing this drummer playing with maracas in his hand, and it didn't mean anything to me at the time. But then later, I realized I saw Chuck doing it and playing rock and roll, and I said, okay. So I started doing that, and but yeah, the Tulsa connection was really strong. It was, Leon was I think he was not from Tulsa, but he lived in Tulsa. He was born close to Tulsa. I forget where it was, College Town.
What was really interesting to me was that Karstein, you're older than Karstein.
Oh yeah, I'm older.
Because I knew you moved out there when you were 13, but what was really fascinating was just this sort of 6 degrees of separation where you're playing jazz, you're starving to death, like Gadsden was saying, you were just making enough to get by, and then nobody knew who you were, yet there were all these cats that had migrated out there, and then they met you, and then it opened into this whole thing. I mean, it was really that was revelatory to me,
Well, it was revelatory, I'll tell you. I was at the top of the world. I was playing with Gary Lewis. I was rehearsing all the time at the Lewis Mansion in Bel Air.
Wow.
I'd peek in sometimes. I'd make an excuse. I had to go get a glass from the kitchen rather than they had plenty of glasses out in the cabana where we were rehearsing. But I'd make some excuse to go in the house so I could see Jerry Lewis, and Jerry would be walking through the house.
Oh man.
And
that's insane.
I was like in a dream state, as you can imagine. And then I saw him one time. We were on the road because we would meet up there at his house, and we'd park because they had a nice parking area for this big home that they lived in, and so we'd all park our cars and then go in a van to the airport. So one morning we were all there early, and I was, as usual, I was looking to see if I could see him, and he came bounding out of the front door and right into his limo, and like he was really pissed off at something. And then the limo sped off, and I asked Gary, I said, "Wow, what happened there? Why was your dad so angry?" And he said, the cook didn't have his eggs ready.
Oh dear.
And,
oh dear.
He didn't have his scrambled eggs ready, and so he was really, really bummed. And I remember thinking, well, of course I would be too. I mean, this man's on his way to make history down the street down at Gower Columbia Record Pictures. And he's making, during those days, it was 1965. Figure out what movie he was making, and so
have his eggs ready. Just have the eggs.
All he wanted to do was have his eggs so he could. And anyway, just all these tremendous moments.
Well, I want to read this to you because this is going to work into Gary Lewis. I've done a couple interviews with Denny Sywell, and he said. In one of them, he said, I met Jim Keltner out here in Los Angeles at Shelley's Manhole when he was playing with Gabor. He had a standard set of drums with no head on the front bass drum. This was unheard of, totally off the charts.
Yeah.
In jazz vernacular, the bass drum is like a lower sounding tom-tom, boom, boom, boom. When pop music started coming in, they started taking the front head off the bass drum because those dang engineers didn't know how to record. They put some blankets or towels in there and it would go bap, bap. It sounded like hitting a dead piece of meat. Here's Jimmy Keltner. Here's Jimmy Keltner, and he's playing musically, and he's got a dead bass drum. He's got no front head on it, and he's got some stuffing in there. Jimmy was always a creator. Right now he will not record without both heads on the bass drum and no padding in it, so it's an actual tone chamber. In any event. Can you break down the kit? And were you using? What I'm saying is this: you were obsessed with jazz, and it was essentially the greatest thing about jazz is that you're using the top of the kit to keep time, and you're dropping bombs with the bass drum. But were you able to bring jazz aesthetics into Gary Lewis? And was it because of this kit that you had?
Yeah, no, I wasn't. With Gary Lewis, you learn real quick making records. The first thing I did, don't forget, was before I even went on tour with him, before I even played live with Gary, we were in the studio, and we were cutting the record, Just My Style. She's Just My Style. And that was the single, and then the rest of the record, the rest of the album, had all the other songs on it,
right?
Obviously, and so we cut that record, and then they talked about the itinerary of going out on the road and all that stuff. So truly, my whole deal started in the studio. I paid. Most studio guys guys who play on records. Their backstory is that they came into the studios from being in this band or that band and various bands, and there's a amount of dues that you pay. Most everybody's paid before they start playing on records, or at least that's in my experience. That's the guys that Hal Blaine, Earl Palmer. They came from Earl Palmer came from playing jazz. And
absolutely, Earl Palmer.
Chitlin.
He was playing the Chitlin circuits, down south.
Yeah, and all of that, before he got to L.A.
Right.
and then became the before he came and owned Hollywood, played on every record there was, and then became so successful and so busy that he needed some help and met this young guy Hal Blaine, and asked Hal, heard him play, I guess, and then said, "Hey, Hal, you want some work, man? I mean, I'll pass you some work." And I've always loved the fact that it's the reverse story from usually what it was. It was the black guy helping the Jewish guy get a start. And
that's the greatest,
one of the most wonderful stories.
I love it, man. Yeah,
ever,
it's great.
But the point being that those guys got their start way back and then came into the studios. They brought all that wonderful experience to playing on records. Because when you play on records, you got to play on all kinds of different records, all kinds of different music with all kinds of different people. And so that's the way it usually is. But for me, I didn't have a big background, like that before I got into the studio. I played. That's why I always say I slipped in the side door, and so the first thing I really knew about and was recording. That was the first thing that I felt really good and comfortable about. And
you're talking about actually playing on a recording, not the actual.
Yeah, playing on records. So that by the time I got to playing live with Gabor, I was just using the set that I recorded with. I didn't know that there was. I didn't see that was that was '66. I didn't even have cartage until '68.
No, there was no cartage.
So I was setting up my own stuff. I didn't know that you could use. I didn't know how then. I mean, I knew him to follow him around and try to peek in and see him record and stuff, but I didn't know him personally yet. So I didn't know that you had a couple of different sets of drums and all that kind of thing. So I just would drive my stuff around in my Volkswagen and set it up. And so when I met Gabor, one of the first things we did was go into the studio with him, and so it was the same kind of drum set. In fact, I think it was the same drum set that I had used with Gary in 1965. So the head was off, and that was what it was,
you recorded an album in '68 called Bacchanal. It was Hal Gordon on percussion, Jimmy Stewart on guitar, Keltner on drums, but you and Louis Kabak
on bass. Yeah, they're Hungarian guys.
but were you Hungarian? But not Keltner.
Well,
maybe a little bit.
Gabor, was from the old country.
Oh,
and
yeah.
He just exuded that whole thing, that European, sophisticated, beautiful thing. I just always loved Gabor. Gabor was just an amazing, one of a kind dude. He was also maybe the first musician that I played with that made me cry. He played one night on stage. He played La Vie en Rose, right?
Wow.
People think of that as a corny old cabaret type song. He played that, man, with that gypsy soul of his. He played that, and I wept.
You're weeping.
Yeah, those were those were great days. Denny talking about that, about the bass drum and everything. I later on in the studio, I realized that I had already copied Hal Blaine as much as you could possibly copy somebody, and Jimmy Gordon and Earl, for the sound that they used to get with the one-headed bass drum and all. And so I wanted to see if I had seen Bonham play when I was out on the road with Delaney and Bonnie. I had seen John Bonham play with Led Zeppelin. That was their first trip to the United States. And his bass drum was huge. I played a 22. Actually, I played a 20 when I was playing with Gabor. And John Bonham's bass drum was like a 26. And that's huge, in comparison. So, and plus both heads were on, and there was nothing. There was no muffling or anything. Well, I couldn't do that in the studio. You can't. It's not allowed. You can't. There's a bass instrument, with
exactly,
strings, and you can't be interfering with the tones and the pitch and everything. So, but I figured, well, they did it in the studio. They recorded. And so I messed with it, and I got, I ticked a lot of engineers off over the years, messing with it like that. But I played ball and did it the right way, enough to be able to keep a career going, making records. But in my heart, I wanted to open the drums up. And so eventually I got around to being able to do that. But I use a lot of muffling. I don't play the bass drum with two heads.
But no, I was going to say that I was just.
But I don't use internal muffling anymore. I use only external muffling. There's a guy, Gary Chaffee.
Mm-hmm.
He makes those really great mufflers, external mufflers, and so I use a combination of those and the real old ones that were used back in the 20s or 30s or whatever they were. I have a collection of those, so I use those and Gary's, and you can make your bass drum just killer. It can have, the tone, not a pitch necessarily, but it can sound like a drum. It can like the opposite of what Denny was saying a minute ago when he said it sounds like a piece of meat.
Yeah. You're just hitting a dead piece of meat. I was just last weekend up in San Francisco, and I met up with Greg Arrico at Music City, San Francisco, which is this new sort of, I guess it would be the equivalent of like some sort of place where Quicksilver or the Grateful Dead. It's different, but the concept behind the place is that it's supposed to be a cultivation center for young cats and bands to get tight. But we did a Facebook Live interview on video, and he said, and I want to get your response to this, especially with Gary Lewis, and then also with Mad Dogs and Englishmen and everything else you were doing. He said, in the early days with Sly, the sound systems fell real short. I used to travel with 2 Fender dual Showman amplifiers behind me with a microphone. I would put it down between the bass drum and the snare drum. That was to get the size of the sound because we were playing these auditoriums and all they had were PA systems, which fell way short of what they have today. You had to get, this is the point I want you to talk about. You had to get the textures and the sounds you wanted. It wasn't there automatically. Today it's there automatically. You can get that stuff teed up perfectly. Back then you had to get the textures and sounds you wanted. And in his case, he was bringing amps with him. Did you do anything along those lines, especially when you were playing with a PA system?
Man, let me tell you something. Wait, hang on just one second.
Sure.
Sorry.
Yeah.
What's that? Oh, no, I don't know what that is. Okay, so listen, to hear Greg Arrico say that is so enlightening. God, I could talk on forever. This is about that. The only time I ever used, no, to answer your question, no, I never,
You never
was
did.
able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I just, he was in a band. This is Sly Stone you're talking about, man.
Absolutely.
Sly and the Family Stone.
Absolutely.
This is a special group of people that and they were making hit after hit. Don't forget they had carte blanche. I'm sure, to be able to do whatever it is they wanted to do. And Sly has always been like completely out of the box in some completely a totally different box from anybody else. So that makes total sense that he would be having him do that, or that Greg wanted to do it, and Sly said right on.
But I want to be clear though, with Keltner, when you were, and I'm talking about Pete, when you were playing. I've talked to enough cats now. I mean, there were sometimes the only thing that was coming out was out of a PA system. I mean, even in
yeah, I could tell you this about that. For me, I've always been a light-handed player, light-footed player, and a light-handed player. I came from the jazz world, and it took me years before I switched over to match grip, and so I always wanted to have the power that Jimmy Gordon had. Jimmy was a big dude, big wrists. I have little tiny wrists and little ankles. And Jimmy was big. I call him anyway.
Yeah.
He played powerfully, but yet he played with the jazz grip, And so I wanted that, but I couldn't have it because it just wasn't. I didn't. When I played hard, I didn't like the way I played. I didn't like the way I sounded. I didn't like the way the music reacted. So I didn't continue down that path to try to play real hard. And so, as a result of that, I wasn't probably the best guy to have playing in your band, to be playing live. Delaney and Bonnie and friends. When I lost that gig to Jimmy, one of the reasons, the main reason I lost it was because I abandoned them. I went to New York to do a record rather than stay there and do this TV show with them. And so, Delaney apologized profusely years later. Jimmy, I should never have fired you. That was the worst thing I ever did. And I said, no, Delaney, you had no choice but to fire me, man. And I knew I was going to be fired.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, the point being that when Jimmy took the gig, the band stepped up big time because playing live, they were powerful,
right.
Which is what you had to be, sort of, people told me later on that they liked the record that I played with Delaney and Bonnie. It was, but that was the thing, is that I could play on the records, and it could be interesting, and people would like it and all that. But playing live in those days, it was tough for me because I wasn't a hard hitter. So anyway, then later on, that thing that Greg was talking about with the 2 amps, I did when Cooter and I were in the studio doing soundtracks. I got Ross, the drum doctor. I had Ross come down and bring one of his big rigs. And I beg your pardon. What am I saying? I had a rig that I had him bring down. It was a big SVT bass amp, and then Ross later on started doing that himself. Actually, he has his own rig now that you can use, and that's incredible. That if I'd have had that on stage with me, it would have been amazing. It would have made all the difference in the world, because then the PA guys can do their thing, but you could have, just because the PA guys do their things, it doesn't mean that the guitar players are not going through amps.
Exactly.
So it should have been the same thing for the drummers. I've been through this for many years, talking about this. The drummer. Why does the drummer have to be the poor stepchild that doesn't get to do all the fun stuff that the keyboard guys and the guitar players do? Those guys, they have knobs. They got all kinds of different. They're coming out with a new electric piano, this one and that one, and the guitars. guitar. You ever hang around with guitar players? They're talking about their guitars. I mean, they have so much fun, you know. And the drummer comes and says, "Hey, I got this thing, and it's going to trigger this or that." Oh no, you can't do that. It's acoustic. It's about acoustic drums. You know?
Dude, it's unbelievable, man.
Yeah, I'm airing my grievances.
No, it's
here.
fine. No,
this is. You've been my psychiatrist all day long here.
Well, it's been. I mean, and here's the other thing: is as we move along here, Jim Keltner loves to. I mean, one reason he's beloved is because he is so humble. But he's connected me with a lot of tremendously mercurial and unsung cats. Jimmy Karstein, we heard from earlier. We got another voice coming up here to talk, and then we'll come back and break it down.
There was a thing in L.A. at the record plant called, at one time years ago, I don't remember when, it was early 70s, I'm sure, that Gary Kellgren and Chris Stone, who owned the record plant, excuse me a minute, get some water here.
No problem.
Put on a situation that was not only to help promote the studio, but giving a venue for artists from all over the country, all over the world for that matter, to come to on special nights. And it was called the Keltner Fan Club. And
it was called the Keltner Fan Club?
Yes, the Jim Keltner Fan Club.
Oh, my gosh.
And
he had his own fan club at that point.
Well, they did it for him. It wasn't something he set up, you know. It was pretty cool. And like I said, it was a scene, and we had Studio C, which was this big studio, so that means a lot of people could be in there playing different instruments and stuff. And somehow or another, I got invited down there, and I went there, and I thought, wow, this is crazy, man. I mean, everybody from Mick Jagger to, I mean, you name it at the time, they would be in and out of there.
Wow.
And so I went there.
Go ahead.
I went there a couple times, and that was probably near the end of the whole scene. So after a couple, 3 times going there, the numbers of people would turn from 25 down to 15, then down to 10, and all of a sudden it turned out to be just 4 people left. It was Keltner, me, Cooch, and David Foster.
Oh my God! Just one night randomly, it got down to 4.
Yeah, and I think there was a percussionist and somebody else too. When we were still jamming, but we liked what was going on. I mean, it was like I don't know, like 4 ticks in a bucket. They were like.
Well, he was cooking on. He was listen. I called you last summer, and you gave me his number. We had 2 great interviews, and.
Well, I'm glad you. Yeah, I'm glad.
4 ticks in a 4. Let me just ask you. Explain. I mean, again, I know you didn't. Politic for this. You had nothing to do with it. It was because people just loved you. Break down the Jim Keltner Fan Club for me, please.
Well, that I've spoken about this so many times over the years. That was Gary Kellgren, who was in partnership with Chris Stone, two of the most wonderful men in the world ever. They created Record Plant in New York. Came out and did the same thing in California, and I became really close friends with Gary and Cynthia with Marta, his wife, and so we used to go out to dinner all the time, and Gary one night at dinner said, "Why don't we do something? Let's do something crazy. Let's do jam sessions at the record plant." And I said, "Yeah, sure,
sounds great."
and he said, "We'll open it up and we'll have Sunday night jam sessions. We'll call it the Jim Keltner Fan Club Hour, and you can we can invite everybody, and they'll all come down if they know it's." And so I said, "Oh no, you can't call it that." And that was, it just felt wrong. It felt like, what the heck, what? And then I couldn't stop him from doing it, so he did it. And But sure enough, it actually worked. I mean, everybody started showing up. John was in town with May, John Lennon, and he was here. We had been doing a lot of different stuff, and then he came one time to see what was going on. He said that he and Richard Perry and May were having dinner. Richard Perry, the great producer.
Absolutely.
And so he said we were having dinner, and Richard said, "Hey, Keltner's down at the record plant. They're having jam sessions and stuff." And so John said, "Really? Well, let's go down there." So John came, and he happened to come that night that we had Danny Kortchmar, the great guitar player who was part of our band, the Attitude.
Oh, the best band. I mean, one of the most rocking bands of all time.
Well, it had a potential, yeah. I mean, it had a potential to be an incredible thing. That's another story. But Danny was always brilliant with, Danny's a brilliant producer. He made all those great Don Henley records and stuff.
Oh, I know.
Anyway,
unbelievable.
So Danny, Cooch brought a song. He said, "Hey, Jimmy, check this out." And he played me this song, "Too Many Cooks." And I flipped out. I said, "Wow, where do you find this stuff?" He's just one of those kind of guys. And so we said, "Okay, we're going to do that then next week. We'll do that next week." And then in the meantime, Mick had called, I think. Somehow I had gotten in touch with Mick, or Mick had heard about it. That's what it was. He says, "I'm coming down." And I said, "Well, you want to do this song? We're going to do this song, Too Many Cooks." And he didn't even, I think I have this right, I'm not certain, but I don't think he even had heard, those are the days before Googling.
No, you couldn't. I mean,
Spotify.
you just had to go on, basically, you had to go on.
You had to go down to some record company, record store or something, and search through the bins to find something like that. So I think he heard it the first time that night. That's how bad Jagger is. And so Mick is singing the song. Jack Bruce is playing bass because Jack was at the record plant during that time. I had done a record with him just recently, Life in a Tin Can, I think it was the name of the record. Or no, that was the Bee Gees. The Bee Gees were there at the same time as well. It's all kind of fuzzy. But anyway, so Jagger was singing, and Jack Bruce, who had been there with a record, Out of the Storm, that was the record I did with him there. And so he heard about it, and so he came. So he's playing bass. It's just a stellar cast of people. And John being there, John said, "Okay, I'm going to produce this record." So John Lennon and Richard Perry are producing Mick Jagger.
This is insane.
Singing
Too Many Cooks. It's 1973.
Yeah, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And it was just an incredible night, just an amazing night. That was kind of the culmination of that was like the peak of the thing. And then after that, our band, Attitudes, it was the core. It's the great David Foster. For people who don't know David Foster other than, the guy they see on TV, David Foster was one of the baddest keyboard players you've ever heard, ever. He was the greatest. And
what did you dig about his style? I mean, he
brought everything. He's the guy that ended up co-writing, one of the biggest hits for Earth, Wind and Fire.
Right.
After the Love is Gone. I mean, so he brought that kind of sensibility to this band, this little band. And so it was a no-brainer, it was David and then Danny on guitar and then Stallworth and myself, and we just wanted to record. And so we had all these people, we had Gary Kellgren was one of my closest friends, so we could use Record Plant anytime we wanted to, and we didn't have to pay for it, and which is unheard of, and especially in those days of big budgets. And so the only stipulation to use the studio was that we had to, because we wanted Studio B, and Studio B was being used by Stevie Wonder to make some of the greatest records, iconic records of all time, as we know.
Yes.
So he was making, Jesus, I can't remember the...
Probably Superstition or something like that.
No.
Songs, yeah.
The album he was making was one of his greatest albums ever. I can't...
Inner Visions.
No, I don't know. It wasn't Intervision. It was before that. What's the? You edit this stuff, right? So
of course, yeah. Don't worry. When we're also editing out the Lee Kiefer guess. That was the Paul's never going to hear that.
Yeah. A few things like that you can edit out. And in any case, 1974 record plant. So Stevie's in there. Making making history with this amazing record, and when he leaves, we go in, and we take over the studio. So that's the way we cut our record, and then we used a few other studios later on after we got signed.
Did you guys ever play out live?
No, we didn't get that far.
Mm-hmm.
George Harrison, my beautiful buddy George, signed us to his label Dark Horse. And so then we had like an actual budget, and then we could act like a real band. And so we went to a couple of other different studios and finished our record. And then we did another one. We did 2 records with them, and we never did play live, but because everybody was busy. David Foster was busy becoming a zillionaire producer of records. And Cooch was, he was about to, he was producing all kinds of stuff, and like I said, Don Henley's big hits and stuff, and so it was Stallworth and I who were we were doing records. I was getting Paul on every record that I could get him on.
Well, he was. I mean, the one thing about that interview, I'll send it to you again. It's just he was a multi-instrumentalist. He was a total ridiculous badass player.
Well, the story of Attitudes is that Paul Stallworth should have emerged as a star.
Right.
He was a star. He could have. He was maybe one of the greatest bass players you've ever heard. He had all the stuff that the great Nathan East has, the great Willie Weeks has. The great Johnson brothers, he had that kind of he just was a monster.
Yeah, no, the notes were so
he
round.
He didn't read music.
Right.
He didn't read, so he couldn't have a studio career, and he knew that. But he could. But it didn't matter. I got him in all kinds of sessions, and because he was a field player, and they would let him work it out.
Yes, I did on a few occasions, and I knew him. He was a friend.
He was a friend. He was a friend.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
We weren't close, but we were close, but we saw each other infrequently. In fact, I last saw him shortly before he died. He died in Boston. And playing with Larry Coryell, if my memory's correct, and a couple of nights before he went to Boston, he came to my apartment and, in fact, borrowed a bass. The bass he was playing on the gig in Boston when he died was one of my basses. That's a dubious.
No, I mean it's. That is Steve Swallow. And I asked him, I didn't play you this part, but I said, I talked to Jim Keltner yesterday, and he wanted me to send along the fact how inspirational your playing was for, people like him and you and Albert who were playing jazz. And
right.
And then he went off and told me this story that Albert borrowed one of his basses and died on that gig. I mean, that's pretty insane.
I can't dispute that. Because I don't know, but I assumed that Albert was playing the bass that he, maybe it's true. Maybe he had already lost his bass. Albert's real bass, the bass that the badass bass that he made history with history. He didn't make
Played with Miles, though, right? Yeah.
Quickly.
Yeah.
He played with Miles. Right. The with Chico, all those records. I mean, all that
Sure.
music he made. That bass is, from what I understand, is down in San Diego with a professor.
Really?
Zaritsky or some professor guy, and he's either he's something to do with music, and maybe he's even a bass teacher. I don't know, but my plan is to one of these days go down there and see that bass. But that's who has the bass, and maybe he had the bass already because Albert had to leave town. He split. Oh, that's such another long.
Yeah, no, I just what I just wanted to say. We don't have to get into it right now. It's just one of those things where I have Swallow's straight ahead cat, and so the idea that Stinson was definitely scuffling and needed a bass, and Coryell, all those guys at that time, they were eating brown rice and all crazy, and it wouldn't surprise. So he borrowed a bass, and then that was it, and boom.
Yeah, I think that could very well be the case, and what's unfortunate is there's nobody to ask. Nobody would know.
Well, Swallow knows,
except for Steve Swallow.
Except for Swallow, and then I think and you talk
Larry
about
Coryell is dead. Gabor is gone.
I think that you look at Paul,
that.
you look at Paul Stallworth, and that's kind of, you look at it. There's a tragic component to what could have been, and then with Albert, it's like a shooting star. I mean, he was
totally different worlds, but completely the same kind of story in a way. Well, not at all. Really.
No, but just two different kinds of tragedy in this business that you have that you continue to persevere in, Keltner, and we've been cooking here for over 80 minutes. So let me edit this down.
You're gonna have a lot of editing to do.
Yeah, it was great, man, and a couple things I will talk. Let me know when is a good time to reach out to you. I just wanted to talk to you about a couple things off air, but it was really. It's always such a high honor to talk to you, man, and this is really about promotion more than preservation. It's truly a way for younger cats to realize how to be unconventional, how to have stick-to-itiveness, and how to come out the other side being a stronger person. I mean, and you're still here to talk about it. So love you, man. Thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you, Jake.
All right.
Thanks for providing that for everyone, man.
Absolutely, man. And we'll look forward to meeting you in person real soon.
Okay, we haven't even met. That's so crazy.
Yeah, we've done We've done 4.5 hours of interviews. We haven't met yet, man.
Well,
it'll happen.
That's no big deal. Anyway, I love you, Jake.
Yeah.
Take care.
All right, Kellner. Be good, man. We'll talk soon.
Yeah, take care of yourself.
All right, bud.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Legendary drummer Jim Keltner, part 4 in the books. We will be back tomorrow with Josh Denson of Calera Wine. Until then, this is the Jake Feinberg Show. Peace.